Domestic passengers in Nigeria will have to get to the airport 3 hours before departure, while international passengers will be expected to get to the terminals about 5 hours before their flight when international borders eventually open. This is to ensure that all COVID-19 protocols, including social distancing and scanning of personal items, are conducted for timely flight takeoffs. This is the expectation when air travel restarts in the country, as demonstrated by a simulation exercise at the Abuja airport and the General Aviation Terminal in Lagos. On the program, how some other airports across the globe are preparing for a restart is our focus. Plus, domestic airfares may not remain the same in the COVID-19 era. That's the program in view. A warm welcome to Aviation this week on Channels Television. I'm Bukola Joe Oketumbi.
The COVID-19 pandemic has caused an unprecedented disruption to global air transport. The Airport Council International estimates that in 2020, airports will suffer a reduction of more than 4.6 billion passengers and decline in revenue of more than $97 billion owing to the COVID-19 pandemic. With losses mounted and passenger traffic near zero, many countries have eased restrictions on air travel and airports are gradually returning to business. Colombia is the first stop. Here, operators at El Dorado International Airport in the capital, Bogota, are taking measures to prepare for the resumption of commercial activity in September, as government authorized the resumption of international flights from September the 1st.
It's a pilot on the way to reopen airports. We have been working with civil aviation, with the transport ministry, because we need standards that are permanent, that minimize crowds, to guarantee keeping a distance, to maintain efficiency as well as behavior, the use of face masks, to not consume food during the flight. There are many things being planned well.
Passengers arriving at El Dorado, one of the largest airports in Latin America, will see banners around the main terminal building to encourage the safe practice of social distancing. Social distancing markers will be placed at waiting areas, security checkpoints and near ticket counters. Hand sanitizer stations will be located throughout the terminal. An enhanced cleaning schedule will be implemented as the airport prepares for the return of passengers, while travelers will be required to wear face masks when they travel. In Britain, the issue of the 14-day quarantine is yet to abate, adding that conversations were ongoing. Passengers are quick to say that this move will be good for travel.
That'd be amazing. It will, because I've got a quarantine when I go back for 2 weeks. So that's, it's tough because I've come from a country that hasn't got any cases to another country that hasn't got any cases, and of course I've travelled in between, but I'm just set to do it. I mean, between Guernsey and the Isle of Man are doing a link, I don't know if you heard about that, so because there's no cases in both of those islands, they're going to start doing holidays between the two. So maybe that's what they need to be looking at, sort of more of those links, so people feel that they can actually get away.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not planning to do anything until November, so I'm kind of hedging my bets that by then we'll figure a solution. I'm sure, like tourism and things like this, you couldn't go on holiday if you had to quarantine for 14 days when you came back, so I'm pretty certain that everyone that's involved in tourism would be keen to find a way. And I think because the virus isn't going to go anywhere, I think we need to find a way to live with it and just be perhaps more mindful and sensible with our behaviours and manage the risk.
The body of airline operators are also optimistic about this shift.
delighted that there is demand there. People want to get away. They want to get away with their families. And the government has listened to the concern that we all had about the blanket quarantine policy that came in. So we're expecting a decent number of countries to be announced on Wednesday. We'll have to wait for the detail. Significant amounts of the EU will be covered. So I hope James will be fine. But this just shows that there's a real demand out there for holidays, which is great for my members and the travel industry more generally, which has been absolutely decimated by this crisis.
Britons are hoping to go on holiday, and airlines are putting pressure on the government to drop a quarantine on those returning to Britain, or to form air bridges where two countries agree to allow travel without such measures.
We're expecting significant amounts of EU coverage. That's where a lot of the demand is. We sent in a list of countries to the government a few weeks ago, and there's a lot of Southern European, Mediterranean destinations where there's a lot of demand for holiday this summer. So we'll wait and see. There will be very important countries to the UK not on the list. Principally the US, which is quite serious for those carriers that operate to the US and in terms of our trading and business relations. But we'll just have to wait and see for Wednesday, and then once it's announced, we're expecting a sizable surge in bookings.
There are some who think people should be turning their back against planes altogether. One of such is Swedish teenager Greta Thunberg, who is also a climate change campaigner. One other person on the same page is Duncan Murphy of Extinction Rebellion.
You now realise you don't have to fly to New York for a business meeting. Business can continue, but what we can't afford is the rich part of our populations flying continuously. 1% of the UK population takes 20% of the flights. 15% takes 70%. If we stop those people flying every week, we could shut down half the airports.
Not everyone agrees. Travel analytics firm Forward Keys has been tracking the airline industry since 2010 and says it's seen a sharp rise in flight searches even if bookings remain lower.
If you want to be perfect on the environment, you can destroy the economy. But at the same time, one has to recognise that travel and tourism is commerce. Commerce is the economy. This is an industry that is responsible for 10% of the world's GDP.
For frequent travellers, flying remains fun.
I don't think I'll be flying anytime soon, but in the near future, then definitely I think I would be considering going flying again, because train too long with planes just easier, faster, just better.
Well, I like travelling the world, so I will be happy to take a flight again once it's safe to go wherever I want to go.
And it'd be nice to go back to Ibiza and that. It's all opening soon. It's the only way to get out there, ain't it? Can you really get anywhere else on a train? I know you got Europe and that, but yeah, it depends where you want to go, really, ain't it?
Back home in Nigeria, aviation authorities have conducted a test-run simulation of 2 airports. At the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Terminal in Abuja, passengers went through the mock exercise under the COVID-19 protocols with the 1.5 meters physical distance markings. Port health workers were seen taking temperature levels of intended passengers and 2 hand wash areas provided before entering into the airport hall. Government officials are also ready for the mock flight, and technology is at work.
These robots are able to do as many functions as you would want it to perform. But the issue of the moment is COVID-19. So we can begin by saying that if we program it, it can provide us with ability to help maintain social distancing by making sure that it makes people conform to the distance. For instance, if passengers are queuing, either to check in or in the process of boarding, and you want to maintain that social distance, it is able to scan as many as they are in the queue and able to detect those who are breaching the required distance.
With the protocols fully observed, passengers proceed to board the test flight to Lagos with physical distancing rules adhered to in the airport. On arrival in Lagos, the Minister of Aviation inspects COVID-19 compliant facilities at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport 1. Hand sanitizers are available at strategic points, with shields provided on check-in tables and physical distancing in seating arrangement. After the inspection, members of the Presidential Task Force share their opinion on the exercise.
It now depends on Nigerians to be disciplined. Because I look around and I have to keep on asking people to put their mask on. The purpose of your mask is not just to cover your mouth, it's also to cover your nose. And if you are within a large gathering and you are symptomatic and you are not wearing your mask properly, you're going to transmit that infection. So I'm pleading with Nigerians, while the aviation sector has done tremendously well, what will protect you is yourself. Really, that's what will protect you, yourself and your behavior. And you have to challenge other citizens that are putting you at risk.
According to aviation authorities, this exercise is to ensure that all protocols, including safety markings, social distancing, hand sanitizing, baggage decontamination, scanning of personal items are complied with when activities resume at the designated airports.
We must be at the airport 3 hours before our flight, for local flights, so that all of the protocols can be done and we're able to depart on time. For international, once we're going to open, I am sure it's going to be minimum of 5 hours before your flight. You must be at the airport, and here is why. Sources of contamination must be reduced greatly. We must become socially distant, as evident by all our seats in our departure and arrival halls and our queuing places. You would see that physical distancing is established by marking the floors and by marking all areas, including that of ticketing and that of the place where you get checking in, where you get your boarding passes. And in most of our airports, we will provide a clean polythene bag where you put all your belongings, like your phones, your wristwatches, and all those, and no one will touch them. You put them on the machine, it gets scanned, and you pick it at the other end, and one person at a time. In the departure hall, where the hall that usually takes about 500 people is now reduced to take about 200. So that is a challenge. So we are ensuring that every single pilot, every single flight crew, etc., are compliant and are current. And the aircraft themselves, we must make sure that they are airworthy and they are certified fit to fly. All of these are procedures that we will carry out using pure science and technology and procedures and international standards and recommended practices. These things are being done, and I can assure you that we've gone very, very far. We're almost ready to begin. Almost ready to begin. That aspect had scored, I think, in excess of 90%. The airports also, especially Lagos, Abuja, Port Harcourt, Kano, and a few others, are at that level. Most of the airlines are doing now their dry run, like we are doing for the airports. They are flying the aircraft now back and forth to ensure everything is okay. Some of them are doing ground running of the engines and so on. Some of them are flying the craft. We're giving them permits to go. So you see a bit more activity this week. We've approved for some of the airlines to begin to move the machines without passengers, paying passengers, just to fly them back and forth and ensure that everything is okay. Because there is no room for error in this activity of ours in civil aviation.
Domestic airfares may likely climb as airlines have to grapple with new costs in this COVID-19 season. This and more after the break. Do join us again.
And the revenue from those terminals
Four aviation unions have kicked against the decision of the federal government to concession 4 international airports.
To individuals who are fortunate.
The General Secretary of the National Union of Air Transport Employees at a press briefing in Lagos said that the Minister of Aviation, Mr. Hadi Sirika, completely sidestepped the team.
It is highly regrettable that both the Minister and the ICRC are engaging in a ruse and are indeed taking Nigerians for a ride. We can say with authority that everything so far about the issue of concession for the 4 airports have been single-handedly decided by the Honorable Minister himself. And the ICRC has not carried out any due diligence on the concession exercise. Our unions with all aviation workers, particularly farm workers and pensioners, will not cooperate with the concession program of the Honorable Minister of Aviation, and we use every resource at our disposal to ensure that the machinations of the few against public interest ends here. The concession of Nigerian airports in the opaque manner prescribed by the Honorable Minister of Aviation must be denied daylight so as to suffer perpetual darkness.
It will be recalled that the Minister of Aviation on the 25th of June received the certificate of compliance from the Infrastructure Concession Regulatory Commission, which confirmed that he has complied with all needed requirements to proceed with the concession of the airports. Air travelers may be confronted with new realities, which includes higher fares ahead of the domestic aviation restart. The boss of one of the leading airlines in the country says that carriers are faced with new costs in this COVID-19 season, which will ultimately be shared with customers.
It's very safe to fly. These aircraft, they're all equipped with HEPA filters that recycle the air that we breathe and listen. So these things have a way of exterminating viruses and others. Besides the constant cleaning, constant sanitizing of the seats and major surfaces. If ever anybody tries to tell airlines that we're not going to fly the middle seat, then Nigerians should be ready to pay about 90 to 100,000 as their minimum fare. Because then it will be distributed for everybody. But if that doesn't happen also, there will also be increase because dollar has gone up to 460. It was 360 before, now it has gone up to 460 cash, about 470 for inflow. So where do we get that from? COVID-19 has also brought some other costs on these airlines, a new way of doing things. The new way of doing things now have brought about, increase in costs too. The airlines alone cannot bear those costs. So definitely there's going to be increase in fares.
With commercial airlines facing uncertainty over their future flying schedules due to the coronavirus crisis, pilots from the Tiger Club in the United Kingdom now benefit from spectacular views of the city and the River Thames. Sections of East London's airspace, normally open to planes taking off from and landing at London City Airport, are now available for the club's use.
Take off into wind.
Anna Walker and her fellow pilots fly one of the club's 2 1933 de Havilland Tiger Moth aircraft from an aerodrome in Upminster in the eastern London suburbs.
Normally, the whole of the London airspace around London City Airport and all the other London airports is very congested. But at the moment, there's hardly any traffic around, and so we are allowed to go fly over places we don't normally go to because it's too congested. I think pilots are always looking for a new challenge and a new thrill, and this opportunity of flying over an airport which is shut down is just another attraction, and it's a beautiful part of London as well. Fly along the Thames barrier, and just looking at the London skyline is just so magic.
The airport hopes to resume domestic services at the end of June with the aim of restarting international flights in early July, although several airline operators have cast doubt on the viability of doing so.
Visibility is staggering. We've never had visibility like this. I've never seen anything like this. You can see Wembley from Surrey, and yeah, the visibility has been unbelievable. And there's no smog anywhere, and I fly all over the world, all over the country, and since the lockdown, it's noticeable how much clear the air is.
The combination of a rare opportunity and perfect condition means the Tiger Club will avail themselves of London open skies for as long as they are allowed. Now to the safety of cabin air as airlines try to convince nervous travelers it's perfectly safe amid efforts to relaunch a grounded travel industry. Many believe that pressurized cabins only contain static or recycled air. In an office building, air is said to be exchanged about 4 times every hour. On a modern jet, it's up to 20 or 30 times. In most cases, compressed air is fed from the clean part of an engine to air conditioning packs. From there, it flows to fans in the cabin ceiling where it's dispersed downwards. Half of that is then recycled through filters designed to remove 99.9% of contaminants. Plane makers insist cabin air is renewed every 2 to 3 minutes. Scientists caution that in reality, air is always a blend, as air currents over short distances are hard to predict. Boeing and Airbus have deployed engineers to examine seat-to-seat airflows to better understand how to reduce the risk of in-flight transmission. The coronavirus crisis will lead the airline industry into record annual losses of $84 billion as 2020 goes down as the worst year in the history of aviation. This is coming from the International Air Transport Association, with the boss of the body describing it as a disaster.
We forecast a loss of revenues for airlines that is accounting for $419 billion, which is 50% of our revenues, and cumulative loss for the industry around $84 billion. In 2021, situation should improve. We should reach a revenue which is above $530 billion. We hope that governments will take different measures because they will have the methodology, the equipment, the readiness, the plans. And if we could avoid complete lockdowns, that would be better for everybody, for the whole economy, and for the air travel industry as well. But if there is no second wave, but the worst is behind us.
Airline passenger traffic is expected to rise 55% in 2021 from a low level this year, while remaining 29% below its 2019 level. This is our curtain call on the show. Do stay safe. I'm Bukola Jo Oketumbi.